Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today I am sat on the living room floor about to dive into one of my favourite games of all time, or certainly a version of that game. I speak of course of the Resident Evil remake, the R.E.Make, that came out in the early 2000s on Gamecube. Today we're going to be playing a HD version of that game that came out on Xbox Live Arcade a couple of years ago now, I think 2014. But the substance of the game is what matters. This game simply could not have been more important when I first played it on GameCube. You see, not only had I just recently finished playing Resident Evil 2 on N64 and loved it, but I've been poring over images and stills of the original game and reviews for years with immense curiosity. And this game had to be this. It simply had to be a gory headshot of a game. The potential of a retextured version of Resident Evil, a version that the developers said was actually the original vision, filled with atmosphere, dripping with complicated environments and a really truly haunted house aesthetic, was just so tantalizing. And there was another element as well, and that is that GameCube at the time had the perennial Nintendo accusation. People were accusing the GameCube of being a kiddie's console.
Resident Evil.
The purple lunchbox. A console that wasn't for serious gamers. And the Resident Evil remake was an opportunity to draw a line in the sand for the console that I loved, and still love to this day, the GameCube. Now obviously the GameCube version didn't have these options like widescreen and having non-tank controls. So the first screens that I saw were first of all a slightly obscure difficulty setting menu. So I'm going to go for a sort of middle setting there. And then this, the character select screen. Now I say that with a sort of a certain reverence because this screen had such an impact on me because the textures are gorgeous. The character models are pretty good for their time, and you could see the details on the IDs. I loved this so much that I went so far as to make my own Stars ID card. This is actually the second version of the ID card that I've made for myself, and you'll see that the number is 0824, which is actually one after Jill Valentine there, 0823. And when I got the chance to put that ID in a wallet, which is essentially the same as the one that we're seeing there on screen, I simply could not resist. So this screen and this wallet in fact hold immense nostalgia for me, and it's brilliant. In this version of Resident Evil remake, the HD version, you can play as Chris Redfield essentially from Resident Evil 5, or Chris Redfield as he was in the game before he got all juiced up, as it were, or Jill Valentine as she was in the original game, or Jill Valentine from Resident Evil Revelations, I believe. I'm going to play as Jill Valentine, but the original, because she's got lock-picking skills. Now, the whole game opens with a cinematic, which at the time was very impressive. It doesn't hold up quite so well now. The animation isn't quite so amazing. And, well, let's just take a look.
Alpha team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City.
Now this stuff like the grime on the window and the sort of cinematic quality of this element of the game did make a big impression on me in the early 2000s. Also, I knew that this was essentially trying to correct the slightly shoddy quality of the original version of this on the PlayStation game. The original version had an opening that had some very dodgy actors, and you know it's infamous now for being quite bad. So actually this is pretty good by those standards. Oh, but it doesn't quite hold up. For example, what we're about to see here with the pilot doesn't quite look realistic.
Save for the remaining body of Kevin.
Oh,
We
Wesker.
continued our search for the other members, and it turned into
A
a
nightmare.
nightmare.
brings back so many memories. What, so there was I 16 maybe years old when this came out? 17? And the ability to be playing what was essentially a horror movie was thrilling. As I say, up until that point I played on a PlayStation, but I'd never owned one. I certainly hadn't had a chance to play Resident Evil. So the shocks were real, like this. Ah, poor Joseph. I like that Jill is slightly frozen to the spot here. She's, fairly new to the team, doesn't quite know how to react to seeing these things. And this whole game really set Resident Evil back on track. A track which seemingly they were determined to roll themselves off following Resident Evil 4 into Resident Evil 5, and in particular Resident Evil 6. Things just went a bit awry, a bit Michael Bay. Whereas this is a bit B-movie. It's a bit Romero. And in fact, I do believe that the films of George Romero and precisely this sort of B-movie schlock was partly what inspired the Japanese team to create this sort of horror experience. Survival horror. Indeed.
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
What is this place?
Not quite your ordinary house, that's for sure.
Hey, Wesker, where's Chris?
I would love to live in that house,
Jill,
incidentally.
no. You don't want to go back out there.
Maybe without the monsters.
But we've got to find...
What was that?
Chris,
What was
No.
that? No.
Jill, go and investigate.
The voice acting isn't perfect.
Chris and I go back a long
Long way.
All right, you two go. I'll secure this area.
Stay sharp.
Now this bit here is interesting because after the door loads, you'll see Barry come in with his and lower his gun down, point it into the room. Now on the Gamecube version, and in fact on the Wii re-release of the Gamecube version, as he came in, as he brought his pistol down, it would stutter. And I was hoping when I got the Wii version of the Gamecube version of the game that would have been fixed, that the video file wouldn't stutter essentially, because it is a video file that they're playing in between as this section's loading. But they hadn't fixed it. It was like a quirk of the Gamecube version. So it'd come in and it whereas they've fixed it now finally for this HD release. Anyway, here we are. Pick up an ink ribbon with the wonderful tank controls of the game. Now, I never had a particular problem with the tank controls because, frankly, they keep you pointing in the right direction.
What is it?
Blood.
Oh, blood.
Jill, see if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Let's just hope it's not Chris's.
Stuff like this as well is brilliant. What else can you say about the blood? He said, I'm gonna be examining this blood. Let's hope it's not Chris's. Has he got like a blood vision? Can he tell eventually what the DNA of people are from the? No, obviously it's not. It's a scripted event that's about to happen. But before we go through that door, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the tank controls. Essentially, it keeps you pointing in the right direction. People sort of used to complain about tank controls, and in games like Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, that makes total sense. But actually, in a game like this, where you have the fixed camera angles, and at any moment the camera changes, the tank controls make sure that you're still running in the direction that you were running in prior to the camera shift. If you said something, the angle shift. So I never had a problem, and it's perfect for this particular game. I also love the loading screens, the doors opening. It builds tension. Makes a virtue out of the fact that they're having to load each section by making this sort of tension building. You know, the doors opening. What's beyond the door? That kind of thing. And then of course there's this. The noises, the squelching. The first time I played this bit, I was horrified. Look at that. And the first time I played it, yes, I died. I didn't know quite what the heck I was doing. But this time, I do. Of course I do. In that sense, I've played this game countless times. Dozens of times.
What is it?
Look out! It's a monster!
A monster!
Let me take care of it.
Yeah, Barry. I do love Barry.
What the hell is this thing?
I found Kenneth killed by this thing.
See, the script isn't perfect, is it? What is this thing? I sort of found Kenneth killed by this thing. I like to think that it's deliberate, that it's part of like the B movie sort of atmosphere, but it's probably more likely also partly a writing and translation thing. But it works beautifully. It's not the best English, if you see what I mean. Wesker!
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 Jill, help me look for it. Let's not leave this hall.
Good idea.
Okay. Now, again, some of the game mechanics can be a little bit clunky by modern standards. So, for example, we're looking for Wesker. We're not allowed to leave the hall. And so the way to trigger the next, basically moving on from looking around the hall, is to do something very specific. And that is, you run around behind the stairs. So, I'm trying to talk and control the game. It's not working all that well. Hang on. Come on, Jill. Down the stairs. There we go. Just love the lighting in this game. I love the way they use the pre-rendered backgrounds. There we go.
Barry.
Any luck, Jill?
No.
No, nothing. What's going on around here? I can't figure it out.
Same here.
Chris and now Wesker.
There's not much we can do. We can search for him separately. I'll investigate the dining room again.
Okay then, I'll try the door on the other side.
This mansion is gigantic. We could easily get lost. Let's start from the first floor.
Okay.
Oh, I almost forgot. It's a lockpick. You'd make better use of it.
Since you're the master of unlocking.
Thanks. I may need it.
Listen, if something happens, let's meet up in this hall. Got it?
Okay.
But they never do. Because plenty happens, and I don't think you see Barry in this hall again. Now I'm breaking game narrative. I'm going back into the dining room, even though she just said I'll investigate over there, because I want to try and move things along a bit before this video is over. Barry, you liar! Where are you? You said you were going to investigate the dining room. Anyway. The Spencer Mansion is a wonderful setting for this game. It is, in some ways, this was my first quintessential horror house. I hadn't at this point watched too much horror, classic horror. Oh, he's holding something. Is it a videotape? It is a videotape. Thank you. I'll take the videotape. And so actually, when I went to theme parks, later on. And frankly, even before I played this game, the pictures that I'd seen of this game were enough to make me want this from a horror house or a horror movie. And so actually, I kind of compare all horror haunted houses and sort of shacks and shanties and that kind of thing to this Spencer Mansion kind of feel. Because really, this is very unrealistic house, and just like the architecture of the police station in Resident Evil 2, it's clearly been designed to be it's designed to be creepy and ruined, basically, and filled with weird, unwieldy puzzles and a logic to the game that is Resident Evil logic. But you sort of quickly learn to play with the rules of the game in that sense. And so actually I went into obviously Resident Evil, having played Resident Evil 2, so I wasn't too get off me. Get off me. So I wasn't too fazed by having to do strange things to open doors and to progress in the game. Like, for example, picking up a golden arrow. Examine an item. I think I will examine the item. Let's see, how do I examine this item? No, that's the map. Ah! There we go. Examine. That's quite a nice looking in-game model, I think you'll agree. I'll check that. And remove the arrowhead, this jade arrowhead. Because that's all we need. Anyway, before Zombie McZombieson comes over, let us pick up the ammo. Ah! Okay. I shall merge. Combine that with that. There we go. Pick up the ammo. And move on. On we go. So yeah, I wasn't too fazed by the in-game logic, and so actually I found myself even more able to just really enjoy the design, enjoy this tension-filled storm outside haunted house. Oh, this is cool. These daggers are essentially for this version of Resident Evil, a useful thing. Basically, if a zombie attacks Jill, then she can, as a one-time saving move, stab a zombie in the head and knock it down, get it off her, as it were. Also, I'm happy to say that I first played this game without any sort of guidance. I didn't, this was a time when people were starting to put guides online, and you could print off walkthroughs, which is more in a similar vein to how you can today, especially those basic sort of text walkthroughs with the fancy punctuation art that people put now. Or I've always put it on these things, but I did not do it at all. I played this game and went crazy with this game. I struggled with the puzzles. I tried everything I could to try and progress at certain points, and yes, at some points I was just going around in circles. But that was kind of part of the beauty of the game. Was this, as I say, dripping, immediate sense of tension and horror, and the fact that yes, while you're going around in circles, you never quite knew what was around the next corner. I know that's a strange thing to say, given that circles don't have corners, but you know what I mean. Oh, should we take the book from down underneath the statue in the creepy basement with the fire and the coffin hanging from the ceiling? Look at that coffin. That is some creepy stuff. Okay. Back up. Oh, actually, hang on. Should we read the use? Okay, examine, shall we? Examine. There's a key on the back. Yes. Ooh. What does the book say? Book of Curses, the Four Masks. A mask that speaks no evil, a mask that smells no evil, a mask that sees no evil, and a mask that cannot speak, smell, or see evil. When all four fall into place, evil will awaken. You think that has something to do with the coffin? Who can say? Who can say? Anyway, up we go. Now, part of me does feel bad because these days I play this game with such a sense of familiarity that I do find myself grinning and running around, you know, and basically being able to find items that took me a while to find the first time I played the game. I play it with nostalgia. I play it for fun, and yeah, okay, sometimes it can still scare me a little bit, but mostly it's a haunted house ride that I'm familiar with, and so I just love it. But I love it precisely because the first time I played it, this game was an unpredictable, terrifying, horrifying experience. A little bit like actually, because I'm still actually playing through Silent Hill 2 at the moment. A little bit like that, because at the time, you know, I was going to school and I had other things to do. I couldn't play the game all in one go, as it were. I had to play the game when I had time, and so I'd find myself sort of living mentally with these characters, just as I'm finding with Silent Hill 2. I would find myself feeling as though I'd sort of left them in the mansion when I saved the game, feeling as though I'd left these poor guys with impending horror about to gobble them up. So it got inside your head as the player as well, and I think that's largely helped by the atmosphere. It's largely helped by the fact that the character models are quite realistic, and by the fact that you can imagine what it's like to be there. It's scary, you know. And I do admire the Stars team. I have to say they don't seem to be fully aware of how scared I am, or I was certainly as the player. Right. Now, some of this stuff in the game was slightly spoiled for me by the fact that I've been poring over imagery of the original PlayStation game. For example, this corridor here, where eventually dogs come... Oh no, phew, okay. So we've initially got the windows slightly breaking, but eventually dogs come smashing through the windows and they try and eat your face off. I was sort of expecting that, and it's in a similar vein to that corridor in the police station in Resident Evil 2, where the zombie arms suddenly come through and attack you. But this little moment here is clearly a moment that they've set up with the camera model for you to appreciate. So the camera angle, sorry, to appreciate the character model, or of whichever character you're playing. It was very impressive, and it still is impressive. Oh, they've added a boob jiggle to Jill. I don't think that was in the original Gamecube version. Well, there's something I didn't know about about this version of the game. Although, is that realistic that Bill would have a joob biggle, that Jill would have a boob jiggle? Shouldn't that be like a really tight, like a sports bra with a bulletproof sort of element to it? Anyway, on we go. I'm not above jiggling boobs, but I want to go through this door. This room is one of the rooms that creep me out the most in the whole place, in fact. Yes, there are other rooms that are much more elaborate, much more creepy and weird and wrong, but this, having to put your hand into a murky tub of water, not knowing what's in there. Remove the plug, okay. This stuck with me. Also, the slightly oversized nature of the zombie that comes out. He's a bit too big for that bathtub, I think. Anyway, look at the shit coming out of his mouth. Ugh. Ugh. Also, how the hell did she get to the plug hole and not touch him? It's a mystery. Oh, the dog's stretching behind me. Can we flush the loo? No, okay, apparently not. Oh, and in the bathtub though, we found another dagger. So now we have two. To be honest, folks, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure where to end this video. I could just keep on playing. I could play. I could do a whole playthrough of the game. But I think maybe what we'll do is we'll go and look in a particular room. Just up here and to the left. Oh no! Bugger off, zombie man. Let's go through here. Actually, I know what we're going to do. This section here, if we ignore the zombie, I remember seeing this in early screenshots of about this remake of the game. Look at the details. Look at all the portraits on the wall and the way the lighting works. The lightning through the window, and oh, there's another guy on the landing there. It was this sort of section of the mansion that really, again, just sucked me in, made me want to play the game. And the fact that it's still so claustrophobic, you know, even though you know that there are zombies coming, even though you know that having played the game before, that there were certain things you have to do, it still kind of gets to you. You get this sense of there's nowhere to run. You can't avoid these guys forever in these narrow corridors. And all the while you're trying to piece together the story of the mansion. Why are mirrors broken? Why is this, plate, for example, back there, actually, just back here in the corridor? Why is that like that? It looks like it's been broken and then put back on its display stand. It's all just perfect for that total purpose of creeping you out. And as I say, this was and always has been for me this is my haunted mansion. If I ever had to live in a haunted mansion, this would be it. I think I'd choose the Spencer mansion. It's just heavenly. Okay, before we get any further in the game, let's just leave it there. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about just the awesome source that is Resident Evil Remake, and in this case the HD edition. If you have never played this game, if you played, for example, Resident Evil 7 and you want to know where it started, go back to this version, because you might not be impressed with the actual originator on the PlayStation. Play the Resident Evil HD version. I believe it's relatively cheap these days, certainly on the Xbox Live Arcade store, and you won't regret it. You simply won't. Anyway, guys, as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.